When you hear that music, you know it's time for Talk of the Bay, KSQD's local public affairs program, brought to you every weekday evening at 5 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman, back from a long stint in Ireland, and never saw the sun more than 2 days, but it was beautiful. It's good to be back behind the microphone today to talk to you with some folks doing things here in our community. That's what community radio is about, trying to figure out solutions to the many interweaving problems that beset our wonderful Central Coast communities. Housing is right at the top of the list. It seems intractable sometimes, but there's a group of folks that are working on housing for people, and this is an initiative that they're going to tell you more about, but let me introduce them. We have Frank Barron with us today. Frank Barron is a former Planning Department, County of Santa Cruz employee, former planner, now retired, and we have Karesha Durham, and who is one of the signature gatherers on this initiative. So let's just start with the expository question that I must ask, which is, what is Housing for People's signature gathering all about? Frank, I'll start with you and then go to Karesha.
Thanks, Rachel. Basically, we're trying to get an initiative on the city ballot to do two things. One of them would be to require a vote of the people when the city or developers want to build buildings that are taller than what is currently allowed.
And what is currently allowed?
And that depends on the area that you're in, but the thing that really was the impetus to our initiative was this proposal in the south of Laurel area. It's 29 acres. It's where the Kaiser Arena is and Ace Hardware, going down to Aloha Motors, all the way down to the traffic circle by Depot Park there. And originally, the proposal was to have one 17-story building and three 15-story buildings down there. And Mayor Keeley came up with a compromise, and he said, let's not have a 17-story building. Let's do 12-story max. However, he didn't put a max on the number of 12-story buildings. So now, instead of just 4 tall buildings, it could be any number of tall buildings. We don't really know yet. And it could be over that entire 29-acre area. We don't know where exactly they're going to be. So we still think that 12 stories is quite a bit taller than way taller than anything in the city now. Twice as tall as anything in the city now.
Even the large building that just has gone up.
Twice as tall as the large building at Pacific and Laurel. That one is 6 stories. If you go, from the corner there at Pacific and Laurel, go up at 6 stories. So 12 stories is twice that. So just imagine, twice as tall as that, potentially over 29 acres south of Laurel. So that was sort of our impetus. So one thing that our initiative would do would be to require a vote of the people before something like that gets approved. Anything over the existing zoning. The existing zoning down in that area of south of Laurel is between 5 and 7, maybe 8 stories. So
and let's clarify for those listening in Monterey or Carmel that we're talking about the city of Santa Cruz, which is smaller than the county. Obviously, I think there's about, what's the population of Santa Cruz now?
It's a little over 60,000, I believe. I'm not up on the exact number, but yeah, probably 65.
So I want to follow up on that idea that the citizens would have an approval before the developers can even submit a plan. Is that correct? Well,
in order for the heights to be raised, the city would have to go through a process known as the General Plan Amendment process. And so this they would, if the developers wanted to do that or wanted the city to do that, and the city was, the city planners were okay with that, they would have to go through this process. But under our initiative, if that passes, if it gets on the ballot and passes, I should say, they would have to come to the voters first. So that 29-acre area, for instance, would be subject to a vote of the people before they could raise the heights in that area.
Now, you're a planner.
Mm-hmm.
When you were working as a planner, would you have wanted an initiative like this to kind of go around your process?
Well, I mean, I am a Santa Cruz local, and so I, see these huge buildings going up, and so my reaction is, even if when I was in the planning department in the county, I would have been like, whoa,
This is too tall.
Yeah.
And the objection seems to be, and Karesha, I want to bring you in on this, that these are out of character for this town's size and scope. Is that what you and others that are working on this are kind of positing as the reasoning behind this?
Yeah, and also I want to say that I've been a climate environmental activist my entire adult life, 40-something years. And just from an environmental perspective, the city, included, when we created the general plan, they included the community. So I feel like the height limits now had community input, and they were, in part from community meetings going over 7 years, and that before that these are amended or changed, that again, it needs to go back to the people of the community and for them to have approval or not. Maybe people will vote for 12, and there still are in the books for the EIR 16 to 20-story buildings in that area, which will, if you can imagine, stand below the building on Laurel Street at Pacific and Front, and it will be over 3 times. It could be over 3 times. So we're just saying, instead of that being decided by city council, allies with their developers, that it would come back to a vote of the people. And we need to mention, too, another key point of this proposal is that another issue that myself as an educator in town is we cannot staff schools. My doctor says they can't get nursing and nurses or staff because of the unaffordability of our community. So the number 2 point of this is a very simple initiative. We didn't want to confuse people. 1 is we get to vote on height. We have the right to vote on height. And 2 is increase affordable housing in all large developments over 30 units. Large buildings would increase to at least 25%. What we're seeing, according to city planner Cindy Dawson, is what they're seeing being built right now is 11 to 13% because of the state density bonus law. So
maybe you can explain what that is and why that limits it to less than it's supposed to be. In brief.
Okay, in brief, when the developer reaches the limit, the 20% or the 15%, I want to say, put in a plug here that San Francisco has 30% right now of affordable housing in their new buildings. They reward the developer with 50% more, but market rate. The most expensive, we know now, the article of the last month in the papers all over, we are the number 1 most expensive rental market. So we don't think at all this will impede housing from being built. There are developers in line to build here. They would love to build here. Many people would love to live here. So we're not saying no to new building. We're saying include people so that long-term residents, teachers, nurses will actually be able to move here and be part of our community too. Elderly people. It's been pretty moving to knock on doors in the area where they're planning to demolish, from Ace Hardware all the way back to Beach Hill. There's a lot of very affordable units there with long-term residents, a lot of elderly, mentally impaired people that will be displaced. And, my concern as an environmentalist is, where do these people go? Do they want teachers to keep moving to Watsonville, Salinas, and driving to work here? And how does that impact our climate?
We were just talking with some journalists yesterday at 3 o'clock about this very issue that the county, especially the mental health department, but other county offices can't seem to fill their vacancies given the salary level and how far people have to commute in now from, like you said, Hollister, Gilroy, and that just puts more people on the highway. So tell me more, Frank, about how this would increase the amount of affordable housing and what that definition that you know about is.
Well, if we look at that area south of Laurel, under the existing zoning with 5 to 7 story buildings, it could accommodate some 1,200 new units. 1,200 new units just in that little area. With the 12-story buildings, it would only be 1,600, so it's only a few hundred more, but the buildings would be much higher. So we're still going to be getting a lot of housing units, and a lot of, a quarter of them potentially would be affordable to moderate and lower incomes.
Have you ran this by the mayor, and what is his reaction? Does he know about this?
He prefers his compromise for sure. He wants it to be 12 stories, with, a new arena for the Warriors, which, the Warriors potentially, if they don't get a new arena, they could just up and leave. And, I personally don't want to see that. I think that there could be a compromise reached where you have an arena with 8-story buildings, 7 or 8-story buildings, and you could still make plenty of money to be able to pay for the arena.
No, I could see someone doing the math here and saying, wait a minute, you're saying on one hand you don't want to build more units. On the other hand, you're saying that you want them to be affordable. Isn't that contradictory?
I can understand that potential contradiction, but with the 25%, bumping it up to 25% for the larger projects, you're getting you're making up for the fewer number of units. You're still going to have a comparable number of affordable units.
And what's the definition these days of a monthly rent? Of course, we kind of put that in quotations and air quotes. So affordable.
A couple of years ago, it was basically about $100,000 was the area median income for a family of four, and so there's 5 different categories of income affordability, and they basically for how it relates to rent is they don't want to charge more than 30% of someone's income. So the 5 different categories based on that area median. The moderate category goes from $120,000 for a family of 4 down to $80,000. So that's a big that's still a lot of money. And then the lower income categories go down from there, from 80 down to 50, and 50 down to 35, and then below 35.
And does your initiative that you're trying to get signatures for, Karesha, does it quantify the number of each category that needs to be built, or is it just sort of a percentage of the total?
No, it actually says in the initiative that it will be for low, very low, moderate. It will be divided equally. And I want to remind people that, workers in the area, they aren't making $100,000, and new teachers make $64,000. And then, the people that serve us in the community, the backbone of our industry, are making $24,000. So the difficult part for me to accept is that they compete for this tiny percentage right now. We're seeing 11 to 13%, not 20% affordable being built. And so somebody up to, 94,000 is competing with people that really qualify for low income in that tiny percentage of 11 to 13% affordable units. And so it needs to be increased. So I don't see a conflict there of our initiative saying increase affordable, because with the state density bonus, we're probably going to be really building just 20%. But right now, we're building very little for those people who live in the community and work here and want to, have been contributing to the community and deserve to qualify for those affordable units.
These are mostly going to be units that are for newcomers, people who make a good, Silicon Valley type wage, or potentially students with well-to-do parents. So it's not going to be housing for the people who really need it, who are here now.
It meaning the proposed 1,200 skyscrapers?
Right. I mean, yeah.
The skyscrapers. The new ones are definitely will displace people and are welcoming. The city council has said that in meetings, that they're trying to attract and invite, high-tech workers and wealthy people, perhaps second homes that will not be used while we have a housing crisis in town.
So you're going around collecting signatures. You're hoping to get it on which ballot?
March 5th of 2024. So that's the primary ballot next year.
Thinking ahead. So that's it seems like a lot of time, but it's not that much in the signature gathering world. How are you organizing? I know signature campaigns can take a lot of money and time. Are you thinking about paid gatherers? Are you doing it all grassroots? How are you pulling off the nuts and bolts of an initiative?
It's a combination, and we're just starting to do the paid signature gatherer method or route. But we have a number of dedicated volunteers. We are behind where we need to be on the signature gathering effort, so we really do need to ramp that up. We need more volunteers out there collecting signatures, going door to door or tabling at public locations like the farmers market. And we definitely need more funding, and people can contribute through our website. The funding would be used for the paid signature gatherers, and we really need to ramp that up. So the website is housingforpeople.org, all one word.
Housingforpeople.org.
Right.
And I want to clarify that we don't have till March. Our deadline for the signatures is October 8th. So we have a little over 10 weeks, and we have been mostly grassroots. We have about 100 people with petitions, circulating petitions in their neighborhood. But some people, like Frank and I, will fill in several petitions in a week, and other people will fill in one petition in a month. So we need more. So we've just recently started hiring some young people in town that are very enthusiastic about this issue, and they want affordable housing, of course, and they want to have a voice and some agency over what their town will look like in the future.
That's amazing, and definitely they have a lot at stake, as you mentioned. Now, as someone who's done this, you said for 40 years, a lot of grassroots organizing. What would you say to someone who, maybe is really concerned about the housing crisis, but isn't sure what it would be like to go door to door? Maybe they're shy. Is there something about going door to door to talk to individual voters that charges you up, that makes you feel really good about what you're doing?
Well, the majority of people, people are hesitant to go door to door, and that's why we always bring an experienced person that goes with them initially. And I call it exercise with a purpose. People are always trying to get their steps in, right? And the other thing is many people are just unaware of this, and they are just, oh my God, thank you for informing me. I didn't know this was going on. And I wanted input in that 6-story building. What is that doing there? So they're very appreciative. Some people have actually invited us in, for snacks. And it's most of the time it's hard to get away from, the supporters. And so we hold their hand in the beginning. So if you want to walk with us, it's a wonderful way to get to know your neighbors. And, volunteers are just awesome people, I find, in my life. I love people who are willing to do things, out of giving back to their community.
Well, you're in the right place, because this station is run almost 100% by volunteers. We have 2 half-time employees, which we value very highly, but this is, 130 people keeping a public radio station alive, and it's a miracle that it's going, but it's because of the heart and energy and time people give it, which is always a blessing to see. It makes us feel like, hey, something's happening positive. It's easy enough to complain about housing and its ridiculous high cost, but it's a whole other thing, which is what you're doing, talking to people about changing that. I do have some questions about the mechanics of not only the initiative campaign, like in terms of what percentage of the vote you need to get to pass it, but also how would it work? Did they have to wait a year for an election to come around? And is there a cost to running lots of new elections that maybe wouldn't be run before? Or is it just wrapped into other cycles?
It generally...
So there's two separate questions, sorry.
It could easily be wrapped into the 2 elections per year in most years that already occur. The city council can put it on the ballot any time with very little additional cost. So it's not going to be that expensive, I don't believe.
And for my second question, what kind of threshold do you need to, assuming you get the signatures and get it on the March ballot, what threshold does it need to pass?
50% plus 1.
Okay, so it's a little lower of a bar than some, like some things take
Right.
3/4 or 2/3. Yeah.
And another reason why we're aiming for March is we want to put it on the ballot before that area is rezoned to these new heights.
Right. It's hard to picture what it would look like for Santa Cruz to have, what did you say, 17-story building?
Well, that was the original proposal, but 12-story. But
12
as
stories, and now
listeners can see this nice photo.
They can't see. You're going to have to describe that picture.
It's basically
go below the new building on Laurel in front and imagine at least double that height.
You can go to our website and see this.
Oh yes, it's on our website.
Housingforpeople.org.
Where you can volunteer.
Completely shocked by this, you'll be motivated to donate at the donate button.
So if you just have to describe, it looks sort of like downtown Chicago.
It does.
Yes.
That's kind of how
it does.
I grew up in the East Bay, and I went to school in the East Bay, and I used to have to go by Walnut Creek, and I was away for 7 or 8 years in the East, and I came back and I saw Walnut Creek, and it was just a forest of high-rises that hadn't been there at all when I was a kid, and they're all blue-windowed, gray buildings, one upon another, and it just completely changed the town. And they're not housing; those are office buildings, but it's still the look of the place completely changed. There's these canyons that are formed. Now, I think these buildings you're talking about, the 12-story ones, are going to all be in a thicket, right? They're not going to be lining the downtown streets.
Yeah, there'll be canyons of glass and concrete, and the new style of building is to max out the lot and not put a lot of public space such as gardening, landscaping, courtyards, even balconies. So the new style of building is kind of like looking like a tall prison.
If you just joined me, I'm speaking with Karesha Durham and Frank Barron, both from Housing for People, and they're gathering signatures to put a initiative on the ballot that would change the way housing is approved, would involve the public in voting on heights above 12 stories. Is that correct?
No, it's above the current zoning limit for any area in the city. It would be citywide.
Okay.
And it ranges, in the downtown area, ranges from about 6 stories up to maybe even 8 right now.
We got a call from Paula, who asks, why are we building more apartments and not more practical housing for families? We're not sure what is meant by more practical than apartments, but
this is just what's being proposed by the developers, and the city is all on board with it. So, there's a need for rental housing. I think this is mostly going to be rental housing as opposed to condominiums, probably mostly studio 1-bedrooms, but I think there's going to be some 2 and 3 bedrooms in there as well.
But the initiative is only about height and affordable housing. It doesn't go into other design issues. None of us are planners, so I wouldn't want to be, I'm not an architect, I wouldn't want to be telling a planner, you have to put in silver faucets in these particular units. I don't know if the public ought to get into the granular level. So you're just having a couple areas where they would be able to weigh in.
This would require the developers to come in and present what they want to do to the people and ask their permission.
And how would that get presented, like in a typical round in your vision?
Just in a typical type of, political campaign where they go out and do public meetings. They have, any other methods that they can think of to sell the people on what they want to do.
Is there a model for this in other cities that you're looking at?
I'm not aware of it, but there may be. I'm not aware of it.
I want to add something to the caller's question, because a lot of people are continuing this myth that, well, the state is forcing us to build this housing and we need all the housing we can get. And in actuality, we looked at the housing element that the city provided the state, and we need to reach this very high number. And we are one of the few cities in the state that are reaching our what they call RHNA numbers, the regional housing numbers, where they're requiring us to build, 3,000 or have the space for 3,036 units, and we have the space for over 8,360 units. So we are fine in that area. We do not need to build these massive mega developments to reach the state numbers.
Is what you just said, I just want to clarify because it's confusing, that the state tells you have to have the space for it, but not necessarily build this housing?
They require now that you are showing that you're making progress towards your goal. So it's 3,700 units by 2031 for the city of Santa Cruz. But the city did produce an inventory of potential units of the ones that could be built in the city, and their public review draft showed 8,300 potential units throughout the city. So that's more than double what's required by 2031. It probably is enough to last us until through 2040, the next cycle.
And did that include a 17-story building to get there?
No, that's under existing zoning.
I see. Okay.
6 to 7 story buildings at the most in the downtown area.
And we should add that some cities in California are suing the state because the numbers have gone up so high. For example, our previous cycle was 700 units of, and now it's gone up 5 times that, 3,700 units. So there are some people, especially there's an article that just came out this last week saying California's population is declining and is expected to stay the same until 2060. So some of us believe these numbers are really just overinflated, and we do not need that much housing.
It's hard to tell that to someone who can't find a place to live that's affordable. Maybe that's the real issue here, is what it costs to stay there, not whether there's room. It's what you can afford to do. And we are next to Silicon Valley, which the affordability over there is quite different, I would say.
Now, that is another myth that we have to educate people around when we're trying to gather signatures. People say, well, my kids can't find housing, nothing's affordable, we need all the housing we can get. And, I say to those people, this isn't housing for the average income person that lives here. It's going to be $4,000 to $5,000 a month for one of these units. it is really 80 to almost 90% completely unaffordable, the new units they'll be building. And that's another reason why our initiative asks increase affordable units.
And if you think about just the change in demographics that would bring, with most of the people being quite wealthy moving in there, or like you said, saving them for second homes, really changes a community as well. We're just about out of time. Would you like to say anything in closing about your campaign that you might want listeners to keep in mind before we say goodbye?
I just wanted to sum up that our initiative, if it gets on the March ballot and passes, it would, number one, require a vote of the people when the city or developers want to build higher than what's already allowed. And number two, it would bump up the affordability rate to 25% of units from the existing 20% for larger housing developments. And I want to direct people to go to our website. We are in very much need of help, both volunteer and funding donations. Housingforpeople.org. That's all one word, housingforpeople.org.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here today and sharing your time. Any last words, Karesha?
Yeah, I'll just send out the slogan that we've been saying, and that it is, you can have fun and get exercise for a purpose. Join us with housingforpeople.org. We're not for unaffordable skyscrapers without a vote of the people.
Well, great to have you both, and I wish you all the best in what you're up to, and honor people who spend their time making the world a better place. So thanks for being here. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your volunteering as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's great to meet you. This is KSQD Santa Cruz. In just a moment, we'll be speaking with Congressman Jimmy Panetta about a veterans program. And then after that, we'll be hearing from some folks into fire prevention. That's coming up right here on Talk of the Bay.